Commentary comes from Martin Brundle and David Croft.
And wherever you are in the world, ladies and gentlemen, strap yourselves in and welcome along to the ride. It is the 2018 Formula One World Championship. 21 rounds ahead of us, and we start down under here in the beautiful city of Melbourne, the sporting capital of Australia, named the world's most livable city for 7 consecutive years, and you can see why. There's plenty of music and theatre every week. The drama today takes place here at Albert Park, a blast around the lakeside on the shores of St Kilda. The weather is set fair, the fans have come and packed the circuit, and the lap times are tumbling by the session. Lewis Hamilton with pole position yesterday, taking an all-time lap record to beat his best from last year. Here is the track, 16 corners, 6 to the left and 10 to the right. It's 3.3 miles long, and around the lake they go. 3 DRS zones in 2018. Hopefully we'll get some overtaking down towards turn 1 or turn 3. Turn 1, where anything can happen at the start of a world championship, and where we've seen plenty of accidents in the past, not just Ralf Schumacher and Rubens Barrichello in 2002. Turn 3, we'll ask my commentary colleague Martin Brundle all about that. 1996, he got out of this and ran back to get the spare car. Fernando Alonso wasn't running to rejoin the race a few years after that. We've got 3 dry compound tyres, soft, super soft and ultra soft for this race. Might have to use the intermediates. There is a small risk of a shower. The track grip is low, but Pirelli have brought some very good compounds for what is a great day here in Albert Park. And this is how the grid will line up. Lewis Hamilton on pole position, Kimi Räikkönen alongside him, out-qualifying his teammate Sebastian Vettel for the first time in 6 races. Max Verstappen starts 4th, he'd started 5th the previous 2 years here, and Kevin Magnussen with a 5th place on the grid gives Haas their best ever starts in Formula One. Nico Hülkenberg and Daniel Ricciardo alongside each other on row 4. Ricciardo with a 3-place grid penalty. Carlos Sainz starts 9th alongside Fernando Alonso, his best start here since rejoining McLaren. Stoffel van Dorn turns 26 tomorrow. He starts 11th alongside Sergio Perez, who was top in the speed traps. Lance Stroll 13th for Williams alongside the other Force India of Esteban Ocon. Then comes Valtteri Bottas with a 5-place grid penalty for changing his gearbox after his crash in qualifying yesterday. Marcus Ericsson out qualifying his new Sauber teammate Charles Leclerc, who starts his first ever Formula One race. Sergei Sirotkin, a debutant too, starts where his teammate Lance Stroll started last year for Williams, and Pierre Gasly brings up the rear on the grid, which looks like that if you're sat in a helicopter. Alongside me, Martin Brundle is sat almost on the edge of his stall waiting for the action to start.
Indeed, wind speed quite variable between 2 and 4 meters per second, also known as quite windy. And around this track, of course, they're protected by the walls and the debris fencing quite a lot, but there are gaps, especially if the wind whips up across the lake, and when you're flying a Formula One car along the road at a couple of 100 miles an hour, over 320 kilometers per hour, they're very susceptible to that. If you break into a headwind, the car's got more downforce, it's better. Break in with a tailwind and it starts floating. And obviously if you go through a crosswind with a lot of lateral load and the car sliding around a little bit, you'll soon know about it as well. So just another challenge this afternoon. They've also got to manage their tyres. We know that Red Bull are on a completely different strategy to any of the other front runners.
So taking your wind analogy there, Martin, will it be a breeze for Lewis Hamilton? Or is the breeze blowing in the favour of Red Bull with that contra strategy, or maybe Ferrari with some decent race pace?
Well, last year it looked like it was going to be a breeze for Lewis Hamilton, and he didn't win, did he?
No.
From pole position. And so we'll have to see how the strategy plays out, how the traffic works out as well. If you've got cars and drivers that are running very long, you have to come in early doors, then you could find yourself in traffic, and that's everything looking pretty hot on the grid there, isn't it?
Well, that's the Ferrari smoking away as it has done throughout pre-season testing and the sessions here as well. That's become a characteristic, hasn't it, of the rear of that Ferrari, as they can finally get going on the formation lap.
Indeed. And Lewis not wasting any time to get underway. So immediately you feel that he wants a fast warm-up lap, and he's going to stretch the field out, and then he'll back them up at the end. He really is taking off. Now, it's his prerogative as pole sitter. He can go just as fast as he wants.
In terms of wind strength, it's 10 to 15k still headwind into turn 1.
Which is important in terms of picking your braking point, especially off the start when your brakes are cold or cool and your front tyres are cool, your rear tyres have just lit up with the thick end of 1,000 horsepower. So you've got a very unbalanced car. And of course you don't want to brake too early for turn 1. You'll be passed and you'll look silly. You brake too late, you'll go through the gravel and you'll look silly. So somehow you've got to get it absolutely right. It's one of the biggest judgment calls that any racing driver ever has to make, is where to hit the brakes into turn 1 of the first lap.
Great atmosphere on the banks around the lake. Massive round of applause for Daniel Ricciardo wherever he goes, and as per usual there's a lot of orange cheering on his teammate Max Verstappen, and well, they can almost cheer at Red Bull a little bit. They've had a car fail to reach the starting line at the last 3 Australian Grand Prix, and so far so good. They actually look like they're going to make both cars onto the grid this year, which is definitely a start for them.
I think Verstappen's really annoyed with himself for that error in qualifying. He could have been starting on the front row alongside Lewis Hamilton, but you can if only all day long. I'm sure the 2 Ferrari drivers could if only another couple of tenths as well.
Yeah, just that one little error for Max Verstappen, spoiling his party. No errors whatsoever for Lewis Hamilton, and this the 60th anniversary of the first ever British Formula One world champion. Mike Hawthorn, of course, he starts as the reigning world champion in 2018, and these the final seconds, Martin, that everyone is level on 0 points. In 58 laps time, someone's going to have a smile on their face and a lot are going to have frowns.
And so often the winner of the first Grand Prix goes on to be the world champion. You tend to have a good car out of the box, but right now they're not thinking about that. They've got such a workload to prepare the cars for the launch. So many things to do, so many sequences they have to get through.
All that effort throughout the winter to design, to build, to construct and to test these Formula One cars. The man hours, the woman hours that have been taking place in the garages, and it all comes down to this. 10 teams, 2 cars each on the grid. Haas with a brilliant start in qualifying. Grosjean and Magnussen lining up alongside each other. The 2 Ferraris neck and neck as well. Verstappen trying to get in the mix. That's the view from Fernando Alonso's McLaren, starting 10th on the grid. The medical car right at the rear of the field as we see Gasly warming up his tyres.
Yeah, they've been a long time getting to the back of the grid.
But we are all in place and we are all set now for the 2018 Formula One season. It's lights out and away we go. It's a good start from Hamilton. Raikkonen comes across, cuts off Sebastian Vettel. Verstappen's in the hunt as well. Hamilton will lead them into turn 1, and there goes Kimi Raikkonen ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Great start from Kevin Magnussen. He's got ahead there of Max Verstappen.
Congratulations, they all appear to have got through turn 1 and 2. Look at Raikkonen fancying down the outside into turn 3. Good speed he had in the Ferrari there.
Hamilton having to hold off the challenger. Kimi Raikkonen didn't quite make it in the Ferrari. 2 and 3, Raikkonen and Sebastian Vettel as they now head on towards the far side of the lake. It's Lewis Hamilton that leads from the 2 Ferraris, then Magnussen, then comes Verstappen, then comes Grosjean after him. Hülkenberg, Ricciardo in 8th, Sainz and Alonso in 10th.
No drag reduction systems available. There's 3 per lap, but only after the end of the 2nd lap, of course. So not in the beginning.
Daniel Ricciardo down the inside there on Carlos Sainz, and he's made up a place and on Carlos Sainz in the Renault. And Fernando Alonso is looking to pounce there in the Renault-powered McLaren. This the first lap of the new Formula One season. Now Hamilton starting to move ahead and away from the 2 Ferraris.
Bottas started 15th, runs 15th. Didn't make any ground up in the first lap in the Mercedes.
Carlos Sainz under pressure from Fernando Alonso, who tries to go round the outside at turn 13 and almost makes it. Now he's going to be under pressure from Stoffel Van Dorn, his teammate behind him. What a busy lap Carlos Sainz is having. Ricciardo got past him. Alonso very nearly did.
Carlos Sainz's childhood hero and good friend, Fernando Alonso, trying to run him out of road basically, but all is fair in love and war in Formula One.
So it's Hamilton, Raikkonen, Vettel and Magnussen, Verstappen and Grosjean, Hülkenberg, Ricciardo, Sainz, and then comes Alonso, Van Dorn and Perez, and Brendan Hartley is coming into the pits as he had a tangle with someone on the opening lap of this race. Sirotkin runs last at the moment. Gasly's made up a couple of places. Leclerc has dropped back. Valtteri Bottas still down in 15th place in the other Mercedes, and here comes Brendan Hartley in the Toro Rosso. out onto the track again. Has he gone onto the soft compound tyre? I think he has there.
Come on, mate, straight in. We haven't got time for this.
And that is straight past Magnussen. That's the request. Magnussen in the Haas Ferrari there has got himself ahead of Verstappen, and I would imagine all of the simulation runs they did last night at Red Bull, I doubt too many of them assumed that it would be all about if he could get amongst the Ferraris quite quickly. And there he is, down in 5th place. Ricardo down in 8th.
Well, this time last year, Max Verstappen rather ruined Lewis Hamilton's race by holding off the eventual world champion and making it very uncomfortable. Now it's tables have turned around and Verstappen's got to get some overtaking done, but it's Ferrari engine against Renault engine down the straights, and he hasn't got DRS, of course, on this particular lap to try and help him with that. If Brendan Hartley's back out on the soft compound tyre, that looks like a strategy call there. Do Toro Rosso think they can go to the end of the race on a set of soft compound tyres and therefore make up a few places in the pit stops? We shall see.
Well, pleasingly, Raikkonen matched Hamilton's time in that lap, despite being in the turbulent air, kicked off the back of the leading Mercedes. So early initial race pace of the Ferrari looks very good indeed.
Last year, Kimi Raikkonen, the only man on the grid who didn't pick up a place on the opening lap of a race. He very nearly got that particular run away and out of his mind by trying to get past Lewis Hamilton, nearly made it stick.
He must have had a tremendous exit through turn 2, and then of course into the headwind and slipstream down to turn 3. Maybe we'll see it again. And finally, it looked like he might have a chance to get through, but Hamilton placed his car very well in the middle of the track.
Jos Verstappen watching on. Max Verstappen watching the rear of the Haas. And he's not liking what he's seeing, I'm sure, at this moment in time. But DRS is enabled now. The drag reduction system, it dumps a bit of drag, it gives you a bit more speed, and he's got it now here into turn 13 for the first time. See how he's gaining there on Kevin Magnussen. Now, it's not a very long straight there, Martin, but he's a little bit closer now as they go through the next detection zone to have another pop down the Walker straight.
Yeah, just the replay there of Verstappen getting a bit leery on the way out of turn 12. I think he's getting frustrated behind the Haas of Kevin Magnussen, and he's darting around trying to distract the young Dane, and he clearly has a faster car overall, right, well, but he can't drive through him.
This is going to be interesting because he's right on Magnussen's tail now on the run down towards turn 3. Same gap out in front, Hamilton to Raikkonen, for Ferrari sticking with the race leader. Down into turn 3 we go. Verstappen just at that little bit too far back on Kevin Magnussen to make a lunge.
So Magnussen can use his 160 horsepower as Verstappen gets out of shape once again. Magnussen can use his 160 horsepower battery power through the lap in a defensive way or an attacking way. Now it's quite clear which way they're going to be using that. So he knows now that the Red Bull can get very close to him in the 3rd DRS zone, drag reduction system zone, where the rear wing opens like a letterbox. And that means Magnussen knows how to defend. You've really got to get those moves done first time before your opponent begins to work out how to fight you.
Kevin Magnussen, of course, been on the podium here for McLaren back in 2014, has had success on this particular track. He's having a successful start to his afternoon this afternoon, and we can look at the start now. A brilliant start of the line from him. Hamilton got away well, Raikkonen got ahead of Sebastian Vettel, and then they all filed through pretty carefully through turn 1.
I was watching Magnussen there, and basically Verstappen fancied to go at the Ferraris, backed off and didn't make any allowance for the fast-starting Magnussen. They just drove clean around the outside. So you can see Verstappen on the inside. Magnussen, very opportunistic and very good indeed. Great for the American team to be so far up the front. 4th and 6th at the moment.
Absolutely. I remember Lewis Hamilton doing that in 2007, Martin, dancing round the outside of Fernando Alonso, of course, into turn 1. This is Pierre Gasly, who got past the Sauber of Charles Leclerc, and he's got the Williams of Sergei Sorokin on his left-hand side. That's his teammate Brendan Hartley locking up.
Which is why he came in the pits then, Crofty.
Possibly, yeah. Giving him a visor full of tyre smoke, which he probably didn't want. And they were. Very nice and careful, and right there you can see, going through your picture, behind the Force India, Valtteri Bottas. Now Bottas at the moment behind Esteban Ocon. He's got ahead of Lance Stroll, which is the first Mercedes-powered car he's going to try and clear. Now he's on Ocon's tail.
Very, very good driving there from Magnussen.
And here we see Daniel Ricciardo out on the track behind Nico Hülkenberg. Renault Power for the Red Bull, and of course for the Works team. DRS assistance for Ricciardo, down the inside he goes. That looked nice and easy for Daniel Ricciardo, but Hülkenberg will now fight him back again. He's got the inside line, but Ricciardo just chops him off going through turn 14, and the local favourite has made up a place. He is into 7th, Daniel Ricciardo.
It's like Ricciardo goes, okay, brake now, 2, 3, and then hits the brake pedal. It's incredible, but you got to look at that and think, there's more time in that car, Daniel.
Nice job, mate. Nice job.
Indeed it was.
Absolutely. 2 seconds, the gap out in front. Hamilton to Raikkonen, 1.2 seconds back to Sebastian Vettel. A gap now forming between the top 3 and then Kevin Magnussen, who's got Max Verstappen all over his rear wing, but Verstappen can't get past.
Guys, any suggestions for the battery?
Yeah. Mode 7 and overtake, Max. Mode 7 and overtake button.
Full beans. Like Christmas and your birthday, all on the same day.
Absolutely. Right. We're on lap 6 of 58 here in Albert Park in Melbourne, and out of the race, and his first race in Formula One, is Sergei Sirotkin in the Williams. It looks to me like he's just pulled over to the side of the track, Martin.
He's in a runoff area, depends where it is. That might need a safety car.
The brake went full straight.
So is he down at turn 13, I wonder?
Double yellows, which means slow down and be prepared to stop.
This is poor start for Williams in 2018.
Where is he? We need to know where he is.
I would imagine, just looking at that runoff area, he's down at turn 13, and that's a heavy braking zone, of course. The yellow flags still waving, double yellow flags still waving, 2.2 seconds. Hamilton leads Kimi Raikkonen. The double waved yellows are not being waved in this part of the track, so they can carry on racing as normal. It's only when they come up to the incident itself that they have to proceed with extra caution. No overtaking, of course, and slowing down just a little bit as well to respect the marshals who could be working on a car at that particular part of the circuit. Gap between Kevin Magnussen and Max Verstappen, a few car lengths into the pits now. Comes car number 9, the Sauber of Marcus Ericsson, for an early pit stop for him.
I love power steering.
It's a steady old run in. It's more than a scheduled stop.
And that's a retirement possibly from the race for the man who hasn't had a point in a race for the last 48 races. Make that 49 for Marcus Ericsson. We've lost him, I think, and we've lost Sergei Sirotkin as well. Ted, down to you.
Yeah, Ericsson reporting that he's lost his power steering, so perhaps it's a hydraulic problem, seeing as that's hydraulically assisted. But just a quick one on Hamilton and Vettel. I wonder if they're both...
Ted?
Tires are getting really hot.
Yeah, I think that Hamilton and Vettel are looking after their tyres for later on. Hamilton is in a commanding position. He can do that. There's more speed in that car yet. Vettel is kind of playing around. He sometimes does a quicker lap than Kimi Raikkonen, his teammate ahead of him, and then the next lap Raikkonen will respond, and they're pretty evenly matched. In fact, Raikkonen has done a quicker lap the last time round by a couple of tenths. But I just get the feeling, and I wonder what your thoughts on where Ferrari stand with who the team leader is, Crofty. Maybe this is a silly question, but how they're going to engineer a switch, if that's what they want to do this early in the season, who can tell? But maybe if Vettel looks after his tyres now when Raikkonen pits first, as is his honour, then Vettel might put in the charge after.
And if they're thinking of engineering a switch at this stage of the season, that's a very silly thing to do. It's you give preference to the guy who's out in front, the guy who can give you the biggest haul of points. Surely Bottas on Esteban Ocon can't quite get past, and the Mercedes and those double waved yellows were waving down at turn 13 for Sergei Sirotkin. You saw it on the replay of Max Verstappen getting all out of shape once again on the exit of turn 12. DRS is enabled once again. They push the Williams away. We can head to Sky Race Control. Paul di Resta has been watching this Max Verstappen battle with Kevin Magnussen with keen interest.
Have been, Crofty, and right from lap 2, Verstappen really loose on the rear. Patience was key. I really think the Red Bull we probably want to look out for. I think Danny Rick approached it, he brought the tyres in, let everyone have a little bit of deg, and now he's going to pounce on them. I think Verstappen's probably going to have to react quickest out of anybody, and don't forget that super soft tyre. It's probably the lowest working range, so if you overheat it, you're really going to degrade very quickly, and he'll have to make maybe even go to a 2-stop, because I heard a 1-stop is very marginal.
Bottas has a little look again at Esteban Ocon. Sadly for him, wanting to get through the field, Martin, he's got a few Mercedes-powered cars to try and blast past, and as we know from the FIA directive, there's no difference whatsoever in the engines, whether you're the works team or the customer.
Interesting, isn't it? Absolutely right, but they're lapping.
Max recommends saving your overtake for the one place you feel Magnussen is most vulnerable.
It seems to me the best thing Verstappen can do right now is just back off a little bit for 2 or 3 laps and see if he can recover those tyre temperatures, and then come at it and then use all he's got when it matters most.
Here comes Valtteri Bottas. Is he going to have a look down the inside on Ocon? Yes, he is. And into turn 3, Valtteri Bottas has moved up from 15th on the grid now to 13th, and he can start to charge after Sergio Perez ahead of him.
I was saying, and they're lapping 2 seconds a lap slower than the leader in the same car, and that's what it's costing him in the turbulent air and in traffic against Hamilton.
There he is, Valtteri Bottas. There was room left, I think, by Esteban Ocon. He didn't defend that one for too long, preferred instead just to run his own race and force India thinking, well, we're not really racing against Bottas today. We don't want to get held up by getting into a fight we don't need to be getting into. You'll see these purple sector graphics that keep popping up on your screen whenever that happens. When anything goes purple, that means that someone out there has just set either a fastest lap or a best overall sector. Sector 1, Sector 2 or Sector 3. It shows you who's on the pace, and the man on the pace at the moment is Kimi Räikkönen with a 1:29.003 with the fastest lap of this race. Meanwhile, back to Magnussen and Verstappen.
Well, with Verstappen tucked up behind Magnussen. Oh, he's round. He's lost it.
And Grosjean's got past, and Ricciardo's got past, and here comes the Renault as well of Nico Hülkenberg, and he's lost places there, and there goes Daniel Ricciardo on Romain Grosjean. He's trying to go the long way round, and he can't quite make that move stick, but Max Verstappen, what a disastrous start to the race this has been for him, as Grosjean and Ricciardo getting very, very close, and this scrap's getting nice and tasty as well.
Well, he's been threatening to do that for a while now, hasn't he? And he wasn't that close. He's gone in, hits the loud pedal, and he drops it on the way in. Those rear tyres were really crying enough. And this also tells me that the front runners are going to be looking more at the soft than the super soft when they eventually make a change, because they've overheated horribly. They've turned into chewing gum, basically.
Yeah, that track temperature at the moment, 38 degrees, that wasn't what some of the leading teams were expecting. They thought it might be an awful lot cooler. Max Verstappen almost repeating what Valtteri Bottas did in Q3 yesterday, hitting that first apex very, very hard, but not at the same speed, Martin, and staying away from the walls.
Indeed, it was well recovered. The pits were ready for him, but he's elected not to come in. And of course, he's on a strategy where he expected to run longer than the front runners, let alone be needing tyres any earlier. And fastest man so far then in the race, Sebastian Vettel, just quietly lurking in 3rd place.
Maybe now is the time for Sebastian Vettel to go on a charge. He's reduced the arrears to his teammate to about 1.5 seconds at the end of 10 laps. 10 laps of racing where we've had more overtakes than we had in the entire Australian Grand Prix last year.
Okay, so just make sure you're sensible now. Just look after the rear tyres at this stage.
We've got no option now, Martin, other than to go long, haven't we?
Yeah. And it lost the rear, unusually for these cars, on the way into the corner.
That's what it looked like from Daniel Ricciardo's cockpit. He picked up a place and then nearly picked up another place as well, because Grosjean had to take evasive action, and that allowed Ricciardo then to catch up to the back of the Haas.
Yeah, he fancied a little bit the inside of 4. It's not really an overtaking place, but Grosjean got out of shape, and this... so he dropped it from entry to apex, which is, in a way, better than dropping at mid-corner. Otherwise, you end up like Bottas in the wall.
I'm sure they've got lots of sensors on the pit wall and back at the factory in Milton Keynes, and they were monitoring the tyres quite closely. But just after Paul di Resta had said overheating rears...
Try to close.
Just after Paul di Resta had said that the rears might be overheating a bit, well, Max Verstappen found out to his cost they were overheating just a bit too much. Räikkönen has now set a new fastest lap of the race. The Ferraris definitely on something of a charge.
And a cat and mouse going on at the front at the moment, but 4/10 quicker than Hamilton on that lap, and it was Hamilton's personal best too, for good measure.
So as the fuel obviously burns away, the car's getting quicker. It's it's just how much quicker. You want to preserve your tyres, preserve your fuel consumption a bit as well. It's quite a thirsty old track, this, here at Albert Park in Mexico, and that's the view from the rear of Romain Grosjean's car, looking back at Daniel Ricciardo. We can go live to the Red Bull pit wall now. Christian Horner's with us. Christian, well, one of your guys is making progress, but certainly not the start you were hoping for in this race.
No, unfortunately, Max just got out of position into the first turn, which allowed, obviously, Magnussen to slip past, and then, you know, unfortunately, that spin there, but Daniel put a good move on the Renault, and obviously he's closed in on the back of these Hasses, which look obviously pretty quick at this point in the race.
Did you get to see any numbers for Max's rear tyres on the pit wall, Christian? Because they were obviously pretty hot.
They're looking okay. I mean, he's obviously throwing the car around a bit in dirty air, but you lose so much downforce following a car closely. You know, his tyres are looking fine.
And from now on in, damage limitation really for Max Verstappen in this race.
Yeah, it's still a long way to go, but yeah, you know, losing time behind these cars ahead is obviously hurting the strategy with every lap that goes past. So we'll see how things pan out over the next 10, 15, 20 laps.
Thanks, Christian. Back with you in a little while. Marcus Ericsson definitely out of this race. That means he's retired now from 4 of his 5 Australian Grand Prix starts. Finished 8th for the other one.
Fernando Verstappen spun. He's now the car in front of Sainz.
Okay, speak up a little bit because it's long race and you are losing the energy already.
Mate, I'm here racing with you. The energy's high. Come on, let's do this.
Energy.
He's like the headmaster, isn't he? On a Monday morning.
So, you do wonder sometimes with Fernando Alonso whether he feels that he can run the team and race for the team at the same time, and then every other team that he wants to go and race for as well.
Oh, you sort yourself out now. That's the messaging he probably needs with Sandra.
Write the theme tune, sing the theme tune. I think that's how it goes with Fernando Alonso. This man, Valtteri Bottas, is catching up on Sergio Perez. He's going to be within DRS range, possibly now, yes. So we'll see the Mercedes catching up on the Force India just a little bit. Out in front, 2.5 seconds or so, the gap between Hamilton and Raikkonen. Sebastian Vettel's dropped back a little bit again, Martin, from his teammate. He's over 2 seconds back, and there's a very nice buffer starting to appear for the top 3. Kevin Magnussen's doing a sterling job, but he's keeping the rest at bay.
Very pleasing, though, isn't it, that Hamilton's still got 2 Ferraris very much in his rear view mirrors. So it's a very reminiscent of last year, where the Ferrari appeared to have better race pace than qualifying pace, relatively speaking.
Absolutely. This is the battle then for 12th. Perez and Bottas. Stoffel Van Dorn just a little bit further ahead. Fernando Alonso, his teammate, is in the points, and we can go and right on board with Valtteri Bottas now on the run down towards turn 3. If someone just locked up a little bit going into that corner. Seems to be a puff of smoke ahead and in the distance. And so Bottas gaining on the Force India. Out in front so far. Lewis Hamilton controlling this race, 2.6 seconds clear. And Bottas doing as sterling a job as he now possibly can, Martin. After he's cleared Perez, you think the next few runners might be slightly easier, given that they're the Renault engine runners, and they might not have as much power at their disposal as the Finn has.
That's the theory, but you have to say, yeah, so you've got 1 Mercedes and 4 Ferraris up in the top 5 to underline the point you're making there, but then we've got a series of Renaults straight after that, haven't we? Ricciardo, Hülkenberg, Verstappen, Sainz, Alonso and Van Dorn, all with the Renault engine.
So Lewis Hamilton out in front, looking good for him so far. Hasn't picked up a victory, of course, since Austin from last year. Didn't win any of the races after Austin and then taking the title in Mexico, but he's starting this season the way I'm sure that he would have been hoping for throughout those winter months of fun and hard training. Oh, and there is a Toro Rosso going very, very slowly indeed. Brendan Hartley, I wonder what has happened there. Smoking from the rear of that Toro Rosso. New partnership with Honda for this season.
What's happening? I'm stuck. What's happening?
We need to box. Try to box.
Sorry, Pierre Gasly in that Toro Rosso.
Well, it looks engine, we don't know, could be gearbox, but it very much looks like the Honda motor. If it is, it'd be surprising, because they were relentlessly testing, weren't they, back in Barcelona. They did the third most laps of any team.
They ran the same engine, didn't they, for the entirety of the second test. Something's overheating a lot at the back. We just saw it before. There was one puff, then a little puff, and then another puff once again. And in their 401st Formula One race, involvement in this sport for Honda, not the start they were looking for.
And of course, they've only got 3 engines for the whole year before they start taking penalties this year. 2 batteries.
Yeah.
Kimi, start to push as much as you can. Critical moment, critical moment.
Yeah, and Kimi's responded by going overall fastest in the first sector as well, but he was 3 seconds behind Hamilton before that message came in.
So Hamilton now is trying to gap the 2 Ferraris. He wants to make sure he's not in any kind of undercut zone. So if they pit before him, they'll put fresh tyres on and beat him to it. He knows he's got to, and that's why they're telling Kimi to push. Do not let Hamilton build a gap.
Well, the ultra soft tyres on Lewis Hamilton's car looking okay so far. Still a long way to go for Kevin Magnussen. He's got them queuing up behind him, Roman Grosjean and Daniel Ricciardo as well. Ricciardo starting to get ever closer to Roman Grosjean, and maybe sensing an opportunity for an overtake is coming up soon. Out in front, Kimi Räikkönen has just set the new fastest lap of the race in second place. He's now less than 3 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton. Sebastian Vettel can't live with the pace of his teammate at the moment.
I think there's something wrong. I'm so much over him in the middle of the corners.
Verstappen really struggling out there. Let's go back to Sky Race Control. Paul di Resta.
Yeah, this is exactly uncomfortable territory for Mercedes. This is where the pit wall need to do their job, and not having Bottas there for the protection of Hamilton. What Ferrari can do is force Raikkonen into getting Hamilton in. Vettel could possibly go longer and pick up the pieces as he did last year. It's key to have 2 cars at the front at this point.
Ferrari in a good shape then, Martin, to split strategy and to put pressure on the Mercedes at Hamilton, which makes what happened to Valtteri Bottas ever more crucial for the team, doesn't it?
Yes, he certainly.
Okay, Lewis, you're looking at good on field, so let's just see if we can pick the pace up, just see if we can get into the 27s.
Okay, yeah, well, that's rather confirmation, isn't it? Bono there having to, you know, let Lewis know he needs to deliver, if he's got it, a bit more pace, and he's about to deliver that in some way, I would have thought, looking at his sector times. Lewis about to pump in something well into 1:27s, I would have thought.
Meanwhile, his teammate has taken 6/10 of a second out of the advantage that Sergio Perez had on him on the last lap. Bottas is getting very close now to Perez as we head down to 10.
Yeah, Hamilton's engineer there suggesting that Hamilton might have been saving a bit of fuel. It is a bit marginal fuel if there isn't a safety car this race. But Crofty, just to underline Paul's point, some mechanics at Ferrari are just firing up the wheel guns. That's always a sign that they're thinking of a stop. The pit window is open now. If you pitted now, put the soft tyre on, you could get to the end of the race. Perhaps not so much the red stripe super soft, but let's see if Ferrari think about an early stop.
And that track temperature, Martin, 38 degrees, as we saw Magnussen locking up a few moments ago. It's still very warm out on the track.
20 to 5 in the evening here. Yeah, we expected that to be dropping rather than rising. It's gone up since the start of the race, hasn't it? So I think that's catching a few of them out in terms of the longevity, the endurance of the tyre. Hamilton's got the gap up to 3.3 seconds now. He's managing the Ferraris, but they could split their strategies and give him a bit of a headache. It's 2 against 1. Magnussen we saw locking up into turn 15, which would have done his left front no good at all. You start to lose performance as well, and then if you lock up again, it's always in the same flat spot, even if it's a mild flat spot, you start to do some real damage to that. But Ricciardo now stalking them.
So Ferrari are making a pit stop, and it is Kimi Räikkönen that is coming in first. So the lead Ferrari getting the first pit stop. Now, whether this turns into an advantage or a disadvantage, we'll only find out by the end of the race. It's the ultra soft tyres that are coming off. Going on, the yellow striped soft compound tyres. So Raikkonen to the end of the race, we'd expect, on those soft compound tyres. Can he get out now ahead of the Haas of Kevin Magnussen? Yeah, plenty of time for that to happen. So Kimi Raikkonen rejoins the race back in third place, and crucially ahead of that battle there between Magnussen, Grosjean and Ricciardo.
So that tells you Vettel needs to get on with it.
Okay, so box, 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 box.
And Hamilton as well.
Cover the Ferrari. So Hamilton had an 8-second advantage over Vettel, so he'd be more comfortable coming out of the pits, of course. Vettel will need some good pace now to build himself. He's got he's going to have a 20-second gap back to Magnussen. It's not quite enough, Crofty, is it?
Yeah, and he's not responded on this lap, it has to be said, Sebastian Vettel. If there is pace in his tyres and in his car to try and perform the overcut, as it were, on Lewis Hamilton, we're not seeing it on the timing screens as of yet. I'm sure Haas would like to get Kevin Magnussen in soon as well, but if they pitted now, he'd come out behind Lance Stroll, and I'm not sure that they would want that. Now, Lewis Hamilton, race leader, comes into the pits. Ted Kravitz, you're right near the Mercedes garage.
He's right in front of me, and it's the soft tyres as well, so they're covering off the Ferrari of Kimi Raikkonen. As we said earlier, it's the track position which is king round here. So they were a little bit slow just dropping the car, otherwise clean stop, and Hamilton's away. He's just got to make sure he'll be rejoined ahead of Kimi Raikkonen for his sake, and Kevin Magnussen looks like he's done it.
Yeah, he's certainly done that. Mercedes responding instantly. Now it's all about Sebastian Vettel and the pace that he can get, Martin, out of those ultra soft tyres.
Yeah, Raikkonen was flying on his outlap, 2 purple sectors as well. So there is good grip from those tyres in their first lap or two especially, but they've got to get them to the end. No point in taking too much life out of them. So we've got a 2-part race really, haven't we? Hamilton, Raikkonen, Vettel, and then a big gap back to Magnussen, Grosjean, Ricciardo. And you have to say, Hülkenberg and Verstappen and Sainz not too far behind that either. So the midfield busy as we expected. Bottas, start of 15, still only up to 13. That's how hard it is to pass.
Well, quite. He got within half a second of Sergio Perez, and that gap has now gone to just under 1 second. So he gets close. If you can't make the overtake straight away, your tyres, your brakes, they heat up, and he's got to drop back just a little bit as well. He's having a torrid old time of it, Valtteri Bottas, at the moment. And while Niki Lauda saying they could get him into the top 6, doesn't look like it on this pace at the moment.
So Grosjean has DRS on his teammate. He's within a second of him at the checkpoint. And Ricciardo has DRS on Grosjean. He must have some kind of straight line speed with a double slipstream, effectively, a double toe with the DRS.
So Sebastian Vettel is your race leader, but he's not your net race leader. He's 13 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton at the moment. We're thinking the pit stop window is about 23 seconds. So at the moment, if he pitted, well, chances are that he would come out round about 10 seconds or so behind Lewis Hamilton, and once again behind his teammate Kimi Raikkonen.
He needs one more lap, I think, to get comfortable. Does Vettel, but I don't see Vettel's got anything at the moment to trouble Kimi Raikkonen, which is an interesting one. As Ted pointed out earlier, you know, we tend to see Ferrari pinning their season-long hopes on Vettel rather than Raikkonen. But Raikkonen got the upper hand, did in qualifying, as in the race.
Absolutely.
Not by much.
No, but that's why he got preferential treatment on the race strategy. How do these tyres look to you, Martin? Sebastian Vettel and on the ultra soft still.
No sign of blisters or graining too much. I think you just get heat degradation in the end, especially, well, they start to lose a bit of temperature actually as the rubber thins, as the tread thins, which can actually bring them back into play a little bit. But I'd imagine the surface rubber, the compound as such, is getting pretty fed up.
So he's just put a 1:28.5 in, Sebastian Vettel. I'm just looking for Hamilton's lap time.
Magnussen ahead of you, starting to struggle, 2 cars ahead.
Yeah, if we get an opportunity, want to take it.
Yeah, understood, mate.
Absolutely, 1:27.9 for Lewis Hamilton on that last lap. So that shows you 0.6 of a second there, the difference between the fresh rubber that Hamilton's got on and the old rubber that Vettel's got on. Max Verstappen coming in for Red Bull. They found a gap to drop him back into as he stops now. And
softs. They didn't go ultras.
No, they didn't think the ultras would get to the end of the race to give him that pace. He's going to come out behind Esteban Ocon, who of course hasn't stopped yet, and ahead of Lance Stroll, who's yet to stop too.
Well, Red Bull's gamble went horribly wrong.
Oh, there
That's
goes
going to go
Bottas
horribly wrong as well.
Inside on Perez. Perez is really struggling for grip out there, Martin.
He is, but he left him a car's width plus, so good driving from the pair of them, but I thought that was going to be a T-bone. He carried so much speed into there, did Valtteri Bottas, but wise old Perez left him enough space whilst keeping some forward momentum.
Right, nowhere to get past into turn 9 and 10 where we are now in this battle for 11th place. Can Valtteri Bottas just hang on in there exactly where he is now and have a little go again in the DRS zone into turn 13, which is coming very soon. Lovely chicane now taken almost flat out in race trim, and is Bottas close enough now? DRS, as you can see, wide open in that Mercedes to have a dart down the inside. No, he's not. Meanwhile, what's happening to Carlos Sainz in his battle with Fernando Alonso? Well, Sainz is taking the long way round onto the gravel. That's never going to win out that particular Spanish duel, and Alonso says thank you very much, and I'll take the place off you.
And unusually, he locked his left front going into a right-hander.
Kevin
Quite bumpy in there.
Magnussen, sorry Martin to interrupt, Kevin Magnussen has pitted, as you can see, has come back out in 9th place, no, 11th place, just behind Valtteri Bottas. Ted.
Yes, but it's onto the red stripe super soft rather than the yellow stripe soft, which everybody else has gone onto, Crofty. So
interesting.
It's ambitious, isn't it? And that's Sainz in the pits for a set of soft tyres. What a shame for Sainz, was holding off Fernando Alonso, gave the place up very easily there.
Yes. Locking up the tyres. Who's that going very, very slowly? That's Kevin Magnussen. After pitting in the Haas and after performing superbly well in the opening 22 laps of this race, Kevin Magnussen, on for a really good haul of points, is having to stop, and by the looks of it, Martin, would you think one of those wheels isn't attached properly?
Yeah, I think he might have a loose wheel.
One of the crew there just walking off and out of the garage, because I think that's the reason.
Failure, guys. Suspension failure.
What do you say, engine failure?
Yeah.
Yeah, I must admit, I thought I saw a wheel not looking fully attached, but suspension failure.
Well,
suspension failure.
Yeah, let's just have a little look here. It does. Yeah, look.
Saying it
on the rear left, he's saying no, it's not on properly. And that would have been the man we saw slamming the door and walking off as well. That is absolute rotten luck for Kevin Magnussen there.
And that's telegraphed back to Magnussen in the cockpit as a suspension failure, but it looks like it's left rear wheel not fully attached. Climbs out over the halo.
That might just trigger a few more to come into the pits as well, with the prospect, Martin, maybe of a safety car whilst they clear that away. Certainly the FIA will want to have a look at why the Haas was released. That's an unsafe release punishment coming the team's way, you'd have thought.
Yeah. And then you're duty bound to get off the racetrack and not try to creep back to the pits.
Yeah.
I mean, because the wheel nuts, though, they've got a captive system on them. The wheel shouldn't come off altogether, but occasionally it does.
So he retires for the 2nd year running here in Australia, does Kevin Magnussen. He is out of this race. This man is still yet to pit, which is why he's leading Sebastian Vettel. He is 12 seconds, 11.5 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton in 2nd place. And whilst Magnussen walks away, Vettel, Hamilton and Raikkonen continue their battle in the top 3. This is the charging Daniel Ricciardo, who's kind of now replicating what was happening to his teammates in the early stages of this race, desperately trying to get past one of the Hasses.
Yeah, despite a lot of downforce under, the Red Bull's been punishing its rear tyres quite hard. And you'd have to say the Ultra's not been a great tyre today, the Super Soft rather.
Yeah.
Too many different soft tyres we've got. I'd rather they had numbers.
Now Grosjean and Hulkenberg both pitting, coming out behind Max Verstappen. So Grosjean and Hülkenberg are relegated in that pit stop battle there.
Hang on, we've got another
not
problem.
Another one, surely not. Roman Grosjean's pulled over to the side of the track. What is happening down at Haas this afternoon? What could have been one of their best weekends on a racetrack has turned into absolute disaster for the team from the USA. Magnussen out, 2 laps later, Grosjean out as well, and looking at the reaction of the driver there, is it more problems with attaching wheels?
The smoke is just the front brakes. They had such a chance of a great result this afternoon. 212 people only in that team. I'd imagine Mercedes, including their engine department, have more people on holiday at any one time than they've got, which of course then has created an accusation that they're effectively just running Ferrari parts, but nonetheless they're really on it this afternoon, and within 2 or 3 minutes the wheels have literally fallen off. We don't know what the problem is with Grosjean's car.
Yeah, Gunther Steiner, Ted Kravitz, I don't know if you can see him in absolute despair.
See him? I wouldn't want to get anywhere near him at the moment.
We've got a virtual safety car. Virtual safety car, yeah.
Yeah, but that's meaning that lots of people are coming in who haven't already pitted, namely Valtteri Bottas, and let's see if Ricciardo comes in as well.
I wonder if Sebastian Vettel might take this opportunity to come into the pits as well. Bottas certainly is, you can see him now.
There's not really a service road anywhere near that stricken Haas, so they've got to have some kind of safety car to clear that away.
Right, Stoffel van Dorn comes out on the track right behind Nico Hülkenberg. Bottas now behind Stoffel van Dorn. The virtual safety car, the best way to explain this is if you take an old Scalextric track and put all the cars on the track in the same lane, and they'll all go round at the same speed. There is basically a time that the drivers have to stay to, and it neutralises the race. There's no overtaking, and they can clear that car.
Does this screw us over?
No, it does not. This is good.
So Sebastian Vettel is coming in behind the virtual safety car, and Daniel Ricciardo's been told, no, don't worry, this is okay for us as well.
Because you can't gain under a virtual safety car.
So the man who was leading this race now pits behind the virtual safety car. The gain you can make in a virtual safety car is that the pit lane isn't part of the racetrack. Sebastian Vettel is going to come out ahead of Lewis Hamilton here. Hamilton has to adhere to the virtual safety car time. Vettel didn't have to adhere to that because he's under the pit lane rules and regulations, and he is ahead now of Lewis Hamilton. So after the round of pit stops, and we're expecting it to be a one-stop race, Sebastian Vettel takes the lead of the Australian Grand Prix.
You're right, you can go faster down the pit lane because you're out of the earliest time of arrival on your dashboard. And that's, Ricciardo was wondering if he had been damaged by it. No, he hasn't been damaged by it at all.
Because he's going to come out ahead of the man rounding the final turn about now, Max Verstappen. So at Red Bull, Ricciardo has got ahead of Max Verstappen. So Vettel leads Hamilton, leads Raikkonen, leads Ricciardo, who started 8th and is now 1 place off a podium in his home Grand Prix. Verstappen moves up into 6th place. Fernando Alonso comes out to the track. He's gained 2. He's moved up into 5th place, and this is what happened to Roman Grosjean. This is why we've got the virtual safety car. And once again, it looks like a wheel gun problem, or a wheel not being attached on that left-hand side of the Haas car. No, it's the front left this time, not the rear left, but they were waving their hands saying, no, don't release, and the car still went away.
They've got a lot of automatic systems on those, and then when the Jack guys and the Lollipop guys get a green light, the car's going.
Both Haas cars out of the Australian Grand Prix for the 2nd consecutive season. Absolute despair for them. Now, Fernando Alonso,
Now, see that in real time, didn't we?
Yeah, so Verstappen got ahead of Alonso. He's given that place back, as far as I'm aware.
He was merging from the pit lane, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And Verstappen's still ahead of Alonso, so Verstappen sort of squirted it because he was on the racetrack, squirted the throttle and kept the place.
Now, you're not allowed to overtake under the virtual safety car.
But he wasn't overtaking, was he? He was on the racing line, and it's Alonso just came out of the pit lane behind him. It wasn't an overtake, I don't believe. But they'll be having a look at it, without doubt. But Verstappen was turning into turn 1.
What just happened, guys? Why didn't you tell me Vettel was in the pits? What happened, guys?
We're just reviewing Lewis.
Was that my mistake, or was I supposed to be going quick between a safety car, one line?
Right, and now we've got a proper safety car.
Delta.
Now we've got a proper safety car, which is maybe what we should have had in the first place on this one, Martin. So the new safety car, driven by Bernd Mailander, will pick up the field and get all the drivers together in a line so they can push that Haas away and to safety. As far as I'm aware, Martin, I'm sure you've looked into this now as well, I don't think Lewis Hamilton did do anything wrong. There was nothing he could do about it.
No, he was obviously sticking. I mean, if you've got to bounce up right against the limit, they get times on their dashboard, the earliest time they can keep arriving through the various zones, the segments of the track. We saw this in Monaco. We've seen it as well, haven't we, in GP2 as it was then, where you get weird results coming from that. But I tell you who really gained from this are Red Bull, because of the full safety car. Because that 39 seconds that Ricciardo was behind, it must be said, at virtual safety car speed, cricket subtly, but Red Bull will now be right on the back of the leading 3.
Oh, this has helped Red Bull and might have salvaged their afternoon. Ted, down to you.
But surely, firstly with Haas, surely should have had some guy out there with a lollipop, just making sure that every wheel nut was on. It's obviously a problem with the system, that the guns weren't working, or they weren't receiving the air, the pneumatic air guns, to actually get tighten up the nuts. They should have had somebody just holding the car, Grosjean, until they were sure everything was done up. But anyway, we'll look at that later on. But yeah, don't worry about it, Lewis. It wasn't your fault. It was just that Ferrari, who can't believe their luck, although I'm sure the conspiracy theorists out there, Crofty, will say, oh, very convenient. Haas, a Ferrari junior team having a convenient problem, but they'd have to be very good actors, wouldn't they?
If you go into the paddock, Ted, and look at those Haas guys, they are absolutely distraught, and you can't blame them for it as well. This was a really, really good haul of points coming their way.
Sure, but I'm just looking down across to the Ferrari pit wall, and Maurizio Arrivabene sort of, looking around and getting his engineers to explain it to him as well. Of course, now the challenge is to stay ahead of Hamilton, but as we said...
So, Lewis, we thought we were safe, but there's obviously something wrong.
No, it's just quicker. You save so many seconds under a virtual safety car, don't you?
Yeah.
For pitting.
Well, let's try and put it into as simple a common sense as my brain can try and understand as we approach 5 o'clock in the evening in Australia. When you come into the pits, you take the inside line. It's a shorter bit of track, and you are not bound by the regulations concerning the virtual safety car, where you have to adhere to that certain time. You can go that little bit faster, but still stick to the pit lane speed, which is what Sebastian Vettel did. Hamilton had to go at the pace dictated by the virtual safety car, and then Bob's your uncle, Vettel's your leader.
I know, but it does still suggest to me that Lewis possibly wasn't maxing out his virtual safety car ability, because the Ferrari came out way ahead of him, didn't it, really, relatively speaking, from where we expected. I mean, when you think there was a point there where Vettel was, 5-6 seconds behind Hamilton. This is so sad for the Haas Ferrari team. They were on for quite a haul of points, and just procedural. Well, they'll be practicing that a few times in the workshop between now and Bahrain.
Just a bit. You win as a team and you lose as a team, and today, sadly, that winning feeling has disappeared from the Haas team. Let's just take a little look here. Fernando Alonso comes onto the track. There's the yellow flag on the left-hand side. He gets Martin to the end of the white line that denominates the pit lane exit, and there's Max Verstappen coming at him. This is your race leader now, Sebastian Vettel.
Gave it a good old squirt out of the pit lane, didn't he? So it's the Marshall light posts, the sectors. They're about 200 metres between sectors. And that's just a quirk of the system, really, isn't it?
There was talk that you shouldn't be able to do that. Some teams were saying last season, you shouldn't have changes of position under a virtual safety car, but you shouldn't allow teams to go into the pits maybe under a virtual safety car.
To use your analogy of Sky Electric cars all on the same track, they should all be going round. The whole point of a virtual safety car is to neutralise the race.
But the trouble is, if you can neutralise a race, but some cars might still need to come into the pits because they've got damage, for instance. So
you neutralise the race, but whereas a full safety car, of course, means that everybody gets backed up into a crocodile behind the safety car, which is a whole different process.
Right, and we are behind the
Like
safety
we've
car.
got now.
Yeah, Vettel, Hamilton, Raikkonen, Ricciardo, Verstappen, Alonso, Hulkenberg, Van Dorn, Bottas and Sainz the top 10, and Brendan Hartley is allowed to unlap himself before we can get racing again.
Daniel Ricciardo pitted on lap 26 and Raikkonen on lap 18, so Ricciardo will be cruising up behind Raikkonen and behind the safety car with very good tyres.
I said earlier, Christian Horner, that if anyone can go from 8th to 3rd or 2nd or 1st, it's Daniel Ricciardo, and we'll get your thoughts on that in a moment.
Okay, Max.
He's in a good place now with his safety car. Unfortunately, Max is going to have to give a place up to Fernando. There was a 10th of a second between them when he exited the pit. So, but no, otherwise the safety car has obviously bunched the field up, and this virtual safety car has mixed things around a bit.
But, so we're seeing Max now trying to wave Fernando past, and Fernando obviously hasn't been. He's through now. He is through now, thankfully. But I mean, Daniel's sitting there on some pretty fresh tyres, isn't he? 8 laps fresher than Raikkonen.
He is, and home race, he's going to have a go, isn't he? So, but what we can see, it's so hard to overtake here. I mean, looking at Bottas, the progress he's made, and just the comments from our drivers getting close to the car ahead, is so difficult. So he'll need every bit of those fresher tyres.
Thank you very much indeed, Christian. Back with you a little bit later. Renault have tweeted this. After both of our stops, the virtual safety car and now the safety car, we're 7th.
So, we did notice some damage to the car.
We're 7th with Nico and 10th with Carlos. Fernando did not stay where he was. He's now P6. Well, make that P5 because he's going to have to get the place ahead of Max Verstappen. And then there's a little gif. It says, a little naughty. Renault think that Fernando has been a little naughty today.
But it should. The safety car's coming in this lap, so, but it should show up. There should be alarm bells ringing and lights flashing if somebody's been cheating under the VSC earliest time of arrival rules.
So safety car is now ending, and Sebastian Vettel has just become the 3rd man in Formula One history to lead 3,000 laps in his career after Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton, and he's now got Lewis Hamilton right on his tail, wanting to end the Vettel lead here in Australia this evening. Green flags are waving, the safety car is in. We can go racing once again. We've lost Sorokin, we've lost Ericsson, Gasly, Magnussen and Grosjean, and now Sebastian Vettel leads them down the Walker Straight, and we are underway in Australia once more. Vettel from Hamilton, then comes Raikkonen. After him is Max Verstappen, and Fernando Alonso still behind Max Verstappen. Ricciardo might be having a look at Hulkenberg, going down into turn 1, and Daniel Ricciardo, Max Verstappen, gets ahead of Nico Hulkenberg. Great move there from Verstappen.
Verstappen was busy defending there, I think.
He was. There's Valtteri Bottas down the inside of Stoffel Van Dorn as well.
Sounds like Verstappen damaged his car when he had that Larry spin across the grass in turn 1 a few laps back, from what the team was saying to him.
So, Vettel, Hamilton, Raikkonen, Ricciardo, Alonso ahead of Verstappen. I knew this halo would get me all caught out with not being able to see the drivers' helmets this season. And then Hulkenberg ahead of Van Dorn, who managed to stay ahead of Valtteri Bottas at the restart. Hamilton was itching to get underway there, and Sebastian Vettel backing them up and doing a very good job of it.
It bolted. Now we're going to see how much pace. We're going to see if it's got the party mode in the Mercedes, but of course Vettel staying out that long and getting lucky with the safety cars. His tyres are 7 laps younger than Hamilton's out front. Then Hamilton's driving into the hot and turbulent air, boiling off the back of that Ferrari.
And it's played brilliantly into Sebastian Vettel's hands. The problems that affected Haas have really helped Sebastian Vettel. And by the way, the stewards are going to look after the race at the incident involving Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean. The car's being released in an unsafe condition. Already 0.6 of a second between Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton. 2 seconds back to Kimi Raikkonen, who by pitting first of the Ferraris really did lose out in the battle there. And after him, Ricciardo 7/10 further down. Verstappen is behind Alonso, just 0.6 between them. Hulkenberg, Van Dorn and Bottas all within close range as well.
Cute, a very grumpy Lewis after the race, and a confused Lewis after the race if he doesn't win this one. But you can see he's driving a different car now. It's sliding around in the turbulent air of the Ferrari. And Vettel then, once again, finds himself in front of the pole sitter, just as he did last year.
Absolutely. And last year it was genuine Ferrari pace that did it. This time he needed a helping hand from the virtual safety car. But what was it he said at the press conference yesterday? You know, Lewis can have his party, or his party modes on a Saturday, and maybe we'll be having a party on a Sunday.
What goes around comes around was his exact expression. But well, we know that last year's Mercedes, which they called it a Diva or whatever, was not very good following other cars. It was a car expected to be and designed to be out front, wasn't it? And Ricciardo keeping the Ferrari very much in his sights. There's Verstappen, who had to let Alonso by. Now, the only way we could ever know if one of these drivers was a bit crafty under the VSC is to go back and analyse all the sectors and lap times and who pitted and who didn't. It's quite a complex procedure.
And Fernando, the last time a Red Bull did an overtake, it was into turn 13,
Information.
It's probably worked out already. Am I alone, Martin, in thinking that this is exactly what I want to see at the moment? A McLaren chassis with a Renault engine up against a Red Bull chassis with a Renault engine as well. McLaren saying, you know, we've got the best chassis on the grid. Red Bull saying, you know, we've got a really good chassis as well. And this is the first time with equal power that we get a chance to assess the capabilities of driver, of chassis and of engine as well.
I think we'd all sigh a bit of some relief, wouldn't we, if McLaren are back on form, to be honest. I'm not sure Red Bull would agree with that right now, but it is good to see McLaren with genuine pace fighting for a haul of World Championship points, 5th and 8th for those two at the moment. Hulkenberg doing a good job as well in there. Can Ricciardo do his famous lunge on Raikkonen for what would be at the moment the final step on the podium?
Well, he's certainly getting a bit closer as Sebastian Vettel sets a new fastest lap of the race. 0.7 of a second the difference it's now coming down a bit to about half a second between Vettel and Hamilton. We look from the rear wing of Fernando Alonso's McLaren to see Max Verstappen gaining on him once again. The wily old fox, the two-time world champion Fernando Alonso against the young pretender maybe, Max Verstappen. 61 races for Max Verstappen, 291 races for Fernando Alonso. It's 15 years this weekend since he got his first podium in Formula One. Meanwhile, Valtteri Bottas ahead of Carlos Sainz. Valtteri Bottas gaining on Stoffel Van Dorn as well, and fighting away in that very congested midfield.
Cars are moving around, that's for sure. Oh, that's very wide for Raikkonen. You have to be so careful out there you don't damage your front wing or part of the left-hand side of your bodywork.
Just having a little look on that far side of the track, Valtteri Bottas is ahead of Stoffel Van Dorn. Just had to catch myself a little bit, but he has managed to get ahead and stay ahead too. Now, Daniel Ricciardo, did he get out of the penultimate turn a little bit slower than he would have liked there? Kimi Raikkonen will see that Red Bull getting ever closer down the Walker Straights. No Australian has ever been classified in the top 3 of their home Grand Prix, and Ricciardo is on Raikkonen's tail, hoping to win that run this afternoon.
Hamilton, fastest lap of the race. He's well within the DRS zone as well, 0.6 of a second behind. As long as he's within a second in the 2 detection points, he'll get his rear wing open, and then I'm assuming it won't be too long before he's told he can start upping the ante with the engine.
Kimi Räikkönen playing defensive against Daniel Ricciardo. That's how close Lewis Hamilton is now to Sebastian Vettel going through turns 9 and 10. It's 10 past 5 in the afternoon here in Australia. Wherever you're watching around the world, I hope you're enjoying the action. This has been quite a complex Australian Grand Prix to try and follow. Lewis Hamilton led them away at the start. Sebastian Vettel had to play second fiddle to his teammate Kimi Räikkönen. Verstappen got overtaken by Kevin Magnussen off the start. The Haas holding plenty of people up. Verstappen took a bit of a spin, dropped him back further down the order. Ricciardo was biding his time a little bit until the pit stops happened. And the unsafe release for Kevin Magnussen and Romain Grosjean caused both a virtual safety car and then a safety car. And it was during that virtual safety car that Sebastian Vettel managed to leapfrog Lewis Hamilton. He hadn't pitted before, he came into the pits, and it worked out beautifully for him to take the lead of this race.
8 World Championships covered by 0.8 of a second. Will it be one of these two who makes it to 5 this year?
Well, the fight for 5 is on, and it is 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel ahead of 4-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, and this is just going to be one of many subplots or even main events for this 2018 season. But we want to see Martin Hamilton already there, just moving a little bit to the right to find maybe a bit of cooler air, whether these two can fight closely for any length of time on the track.
You know, Vettel's used to being out front. He's not a man that would normally make a mistake under pressure. As you said, Lewis seemed like he was trying to find a little bit of clear air, the cooling air as well. And doing it once again. Vettel, I think, has showed earlier on, Ferrari showed earlier on, they have the pace to stay with and now stay ahead of the Mercedes.
And Hamilton's lost time to Vettel on this particular lap. Sebastian Vettel, of course, has tyres on his car that are significantly fresher and younger than Lewis Hamilton's, who pitted earlier before we had all the virtual safety car shenanigans. Lost from this race, Sergei Sirotkin in his debut Grand Prix with a brake issue. We've lost Marcus Ericsson, who seemed to lose power as well. Pierre Gasly and Honda and Toro Rosso not starting off in the way they wanted. Grosjean and Magnussen having a real torrid time in the pit stops as well. Kimi Räikkönen having to defend very impressively indeed once again from last name and last name. Well, I'll give you their names. It's Kimi Räikkönen and it's Daniel Ricciardo. You know their names anyway.
So, what can Ricciardo do? When can he do this? He's not had great straight line speed. He will get triple DRS. I think it's going to have to be Dan Deere down into turn 3, isn't it? And Räikkönen had that one well spotted driving down the middle of the track.
Well, Kimi will compute where it is that the Red Bull has the ability to get closer and make a dive down the inside. You remember Monza last year, though, when Räikkönen had to, well, just put up with the fact that the Red Bull was breezing past him in the braking zone. He'll know that Ricciardo is more than capable of making a move.
Well, Ricciardo got onto him because Räikkönen hit the curb too hard in turn 1, the same curb that Bottas hit yesterday. And Ricciardo half the car off the track coming through 14 there. But yeah, he's under pressure, isn't he, Räikkönen? Under pressure.
He's coming back for more, is Daniel Ricciardo here. His tyres are fresher than Kimi Räikkönen's. Now, is he gaining enough with DRS down that main straight? He's showing Kimi that he's there, but he's not in a position to make a move. Is he close enough now, though, Martin, I wonder?
I think it was Räikkönen made a mistake on the previous lap, didn't he? That was what was the difference, why he was under pressure. Bottas has closed right to the back of Hülkenberg straight away, looking at 7th place in the other Mercedes.
Yeah, Räikkönen going wide, Ricciardo going wide, just kicking up a bit of dirt as well through turn 13. I tell you, if Ricciardo can pull off a Monza-esque type move today...
Come on, you're doing a great job, pace is good. He will make mistakes, we can see that. Let's keep it smooth, keep the pressure on.
If he can pull off a move like he did in the Italian Grand Prix last year this afternoon, they'll hear the cheers from the banks of Albert Park all the way back in Monza.
helped a bit by the safety car that they're so close, but it's still good to see 3 different chassis running at pretty similar pace, isn't it? All in the 1 minute 27s. Hamilton is now on for another blistering lap. He's got to get back into the DRS zone.
And not helping Daniel Ricciardo in qualifying, just to point out that the Ferraris were quickest in the speed traps at the end of every sector in qualifying. So even without DRS, they've got very good top speed. So that's not going to count in Ricciardo or Lewis Hamilton's favour. As they cross the line, he's back in DRS range as Lewis Hamilton with the fastest lap of this race. So he's back under a second behind Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, this is a real slog it out, isn't it? Now into the 1 minute 26s. Miles quicker than anybody else. This is personal.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and it lays down a marker for the rest of the season as well. Ted, down to you.
So I've got some information from Mercedes, Crofty. They say they're going to have a look through all the timings and see whether Hamilton wasn't driving quick enough to a virtual safety car time, but you would have to imagine that he wouldn't make a mistake like that. He's quite used to doing that, isn't he? But they said they will look at the data after the race and see if that was the issue. But what they think was happening, and what is evident, was that Vettel was within Hamilton's virtual safety car window, wasn't he, to use the engineering terminology. You know, he was going to, if there was virtual safety car at that moment, Vettel was going to beat Hamilton out of the pits if Vettel pitted, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, we've seen it before where you can make these gains in the pits. I'm sure Mercedes were aware of it. Lewis Hamilton has just been told, by the way, Martin, he can use Strat 14, but then he's been warned Strat 14 is not a sustainable mode. It's a bit volatile.
And of course, you know, it's a long season, 3 internal combustion engines for the whole season. You use that for too long, you're taking life out of it later down the road. So once again, both of them in the 26s, but the Mercedes of Hamilton already sliding around, and as he's turning in quite early now as well, that doesn't look particularly healthy, does it?
No. Once again, the smoking Ferrari. They've changed the way that the gases come out through the exhaust. They don't go back down the exhaust and used up by the turbo this year, so it's all changed around a bit. Connected, of course, with the ability to burn oil as fuel.
Yeah, still don't see F1 cars smoking that badly normally, unless there's the beginning of a gremlin.
Or they're electing a new pope. I'm not quite sure what's going on with the back of that Ferrari. So we've lost from this race Sergei Sorokin, Marcus Ericsson, Pierre Gasly, Kevin Magnussen and Roman Grosjean. So 5 out of this particular race. Brendan Hartley, I should say, running last for Toro Rosso. Lance Stroll in the race for Williams, the only Williams remaining. Charles Leclerc on his debut runs 13th behind Esteban Ocon and Sergio Perez, not in the points for Force India. In the points, Carlos Sainz is running 10th at the moment.
Yes, DRS.
Lewis Hamilton certainly does have DRS. Van Dorn just behind Valtteri Bottas, who was closing in on Nico Hülkenberg, but has had to back off a little bit. Max Verstappen is still having a go, as you can see, at Fernando Alonso. Daniel Ricciardo is still having a go at Kimi Raikkonen. It's lap 42 of this Australian Grand Prix, and we're all set for a really good year if it carries on like this. Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel barely separated by a few car lengths, giving us great entertainment and great excitement. 1:26.8, another fastest lap from Lewis Hamilton. He's there or thereabouts, waiting to pounce.
Strat 14 on the engine. I thought anyone up to 10 or 11. So plenty of power going on, despite being driving into the turbulent air of the Ferrari. And of course, that'll be generating more heat as well. He'll need to keep an eye on that. So he'll probably have 2 or 3 laps to get the job done, then he'll have to back it off again.
12 points, McLaren are on course for scoring at the moment. That would match their biggest haul of points under Honda. And the Honda years running Renault power, of course, today. And Fernando Alonso said, you know, we could be on for a good points haul. He knew, of course, that these Australian Grand Prix often throw up a safety car or 2. It's now 8 of the last 11 races here that have featured a safety car at least once. And there's good news for Sebastian Vettel. Lewis Hamilton not within DRS range on this lap.
Lewis having to go offline to keep his engine cool, as he is now. But I notice he's turning in quite early into the corners as well, like he feels the need to get the nose of the Ferrari in the turbulent air. and Ricciardo doing the same thing, really.
Ricciardo's back for another charge on Kimi Räikkönen here. He's just backed off a little bit on that last lap, but I think he's going for it once again. And Kimi's going to have to watch himself as they head down towards turn 3. Ricciardo just a bit too far back. Räikkönen, as you can see, really covered off the inside there. There was going to be absolutely no room for Ricciardo to get past. The battle continues on. 1 and 2, 3 and 4, separated by a few car lengths each particular tussle.
Ricciardo fastest of the top 4 last time around in the 1:26s.
And then 5 and 6, there's just a few car lengths in it between Alonso and Verstappen as well. Now, Max Verstappen had to give that place back to Fernando Alonso again, and he's kept it, the Spaniard, and he's going to take some shifting by the looks of it at the moment. Some great on-track battles. Bottas and Hulkenberg too.
Power unit temps, but keep it there. Keep your head down. You're doing well.
You're doing well. You're leading. You're very good, Sebastian. Just what we expected this afternoon.
Yeah, so the message was Hamilton struggling with the power unit temps, as we've all seen. Seb would have spotted that as well.
Verstappen. Yeah, going a bit wide.
He's had a bit of a scruffy afternoon, hasn't he, young Max?
He's a man in a hurry. Sometimes maybe a bit too much of a hurry. Or do you just have to take a lot of chances here? Nico Rosberg's found a couple of friends to have a chat with, and we'll be certainly having a chat with him after this race and seeing what he makes of it. The Formula 1 World Champion in 2016, part of our coverage this season on Sky Sports F1. But is it a racetrack where you know there's not much overtaking, Martin, where you do have to take a few risks more than you normally would?
Yeah, but it's pretty dusty and bumpy if you get too wide, as many of them have found. Look at that. Hulkenberg right in there as well. I thought Bottas had a good chance of passing at least Hulkenberg by now, but can't get near him. Good, very good speed there from Hulkenberg.
I think his chances might improve a little bit, given that he's caught up with Hulkenberg on the back of this scrap between Alonso and Verstappen. You know,
yeah.
Alonso's a blockage here, isn't he?
He is, but Bottas got immediately within 7/8 tenths, and that he's stayed there ever since.
I have no power now.
Okay, we're looking into it.
He's really backed off to Stoffel Van Dorn, and coming up with pressure a little bit from Sergio Perez, as well as Carlos Sainz. Esteban Ocon just behind Perez in the other Force India.
Calling for Verstappen to have to wave Alonso past, but it was deemed that Alonso got to the second safety car line a 1/10 of a second before Verstappen did, despite him arriving into the corner earlier. All a little bit technical, that, and quite hard for us all to see.
Basically, Max wasn't arriving at too much speed, but the stewards deemed that he did overtake Fernando Alonso, who was coming out of the pits.
I think they looked at the second safety car line on the exit of the pits for the blend, for this up blending in, and deemed that, as they were all under virtual safety car rules, he was momentarily ahead. That's why Verstappen had to let him back through.
Message from Renault that all feel is normal once again for Carlos Sainz. Whatever the problem was, they fixed it. His lap time rather represents that.
Just have a think how you want to approach the last part of the race. Do you want to attack every lap or chill out and go again? Have a think.
I don't want to let him breathe.
If he could get on the podium today, I think it would mean so much for Daniel Ricciardo. He's had another torrid week at his home Grand Prix.
Especially as he lost one back here in 2014, didn't he?
Yeah, you have to be careful when you come out with a stat. No Australian has been classified in the top 3 of his home Grand Prix. Yes, he stood on the podium, but then they kicked him out, and it meant that Kevin Magnussen and Jenson Button took that double podium for McLaren. The last double podium, of course, that McLaren had in Formula 1. On the fastest lap, going to Sebastian Vettel this time around. He's a second clear of Lewis Hamilton.
Hamilton out of the DRS then, but that's not the detection point over the finish line. It's just before turn 11.
Verstappen just wants Alonso to know he's there. I think Alonso knew he was there. He certainly knows he's there now, as the McLaren orange leads the Red Bull blue, yellow and red, and once again Alonso's doing a really good job of just staying far enough ahead in the overtake, in the heavy braking zones where you can make a move to frustrate Verstappen on this particular occasion. Meanwhile, on board with Valtteri Bottas.
Hamilton's responding as well. Hamilton's responding big time.
Bottas is
to Vettel.
Yeah, Hamilton's responding big time. Bottas is dropping back a little bit here, Martin.
Yes, he is. He's lost 8 tenths.
It's
quite slow. He's quite slow in there.
Yeah. I wonder if he's got a problem or he's just doing it for temperatures or not. But there's certainly not a possibility for Bottas to be attacking too much at the moment. And he could salvage something from this weekend if he could get past those in front.
Can I push yet? Let me know how much you want it. Come on. I'm going for it.
Yeah. Not waiting for an answer. He's going to go for it. How much does it mean? 21 races to come this year. How much does it mean for either of these two to win the opener?
Wow, I know it's a big points turnaround, isn't it? 25 to 18 times 2 effectively, if you can swap those around, and a big cushion that might come in very useful, because it does seem Ferrari have a good race car as well. It's certainly been a good match for a Ferrari, for a Mercedes today, but Lewis is exploring new parts of the racetrack. He hasn't been on so far this weekend. Has he gone straight over there, Lewis? Yes, I think he went really wide there into 9.
Yeah.
And lost a load of time.
Well, made his mind up to go for it. That's cost him around about 1.7 seconds in doing so.
I think he just blocked a wheel on the way into 9. And then
there it is.
There he goes. And then a little run across just on the edge of the grass.
That will be very frustrating indeed. It's a little error from the defending world champion that's cost him the opportunity to attack Sebastian Vettel.
Just got in the turbulent air of the Ferrari, unloaded the front wing slightly, bit late on the brakes, and boom, the tyre is under rotating, as they call it, or locked up, as we might say.
So, lap 48 of 58, Hamilton is running out of time to challenge Vettel once again.
I bet you're going to see some kind of lap time now from Hamilton.
Well, let's see. He's got 10 laps or so to try and repair the damage done by that mistake. Vettel leads from Hamilton, Raikkonen from Ricciardo. So has he got enough time to not only close down, but to have another go once again?
Yes. I would say so, but that's cost him. He's going to lose critical laps, catching him back up now.
This is what we need. Little back marker to get in on the equation as well. Brendan Hartley just ahead of Sebastian Vettel. You know, it's not easy to move aside, is it, Martin? Here might just hamper Vettel a little bit. You never know.
So Hamilton's gained a half second back so far on this lap over the leader, but it was 2.9, so he lost nearly 2 seconds.
Okay, let's see if you get temps under control. We have Hartley coming up in 3 laps, so opportunity there. Back marker traffic.
And they've spotted that on the Mercedes pit wall as well. Pete Bonington, Lewis Hamilton's race engineer, giving him the message. Now here comes Alonso, Verstappen, Hülkenberg, and Bottas has joined that quartet once again.
Yeah, it seems to be running fine now, doesn't it? And Van Dorn keeping them in view as well at the back, just about.
And so Valtteri Bottas qualifying, absolute horror for him. If he can now get past Hülkenberg and then start to challenge Verstappen, that kind of makes up a little bit for what happened yesterday, you'd have thought.
Well, we know the team thought he could get 6th, and he's at 8th at the moment. And, yeah, he's got to pass somebody for that to happen, but they're good pedalers ahead of him.
The safety cars really helped him, Valtteri Bottas today.
He's half a second faster than you, and try to pass Hartley before he is coming to you.
Well, Brendan Hartley still ahead of Sebastian Vettel. They're not showing Hartley any blue flags just yet.
It was 7 tenths actually. Hamilton faster than Vettel on the previous lap.
First
and
blue
he's still
flag.
Going for it.
First blue flag shown to Brendan Hartley. So he's going to have to move aside very, very shortly. Hülkenberg really under pressure from Valtteri Bottas. This should be Fernando Alonso coming through now. It is. Verstappen still a bit too far back. They just can't quite get close enough. And Sebastian Vettel does lap Brendan Hartley and Lewis Hamilton as well.
Yeah, I'm struggling with my
stomach. I have a lot of nausea from the water.
Sainz is dropping ever further back into the clutches of Sergio Perez again. Hulkenberg's got DRS, of course. That's not helping Valtteri Bottas, because Hulkenberg's close enough to Verstappen ahead of him.
Nausea from his drinks bottle is what he said.
Yeah.
Sainz.
It's hot out there, isn't it, Martin, as well? 23 degrees the air temperature. It might be at 5:30 in the early evening here in Melbourne, but it's certainly a war of attrition for those out on the track. And Alain Prost, four-time world champion, I'm sure will understand that more than anybody else in the Renault garage. We're on lap 50 of 58 here in Albert Park, and it's 1.7 seconds between Sebastian Vettel and Lewis Hamilton. Make that 1.5 seconds now. Hamilton continuing to catch Sebastian Vettel. I would imagine, just looking at it as I did, that Vettel lost a bit more time lapping Brendan Hartley than Lewis Hamilton did.
They called it quite a difficult part of the racetrack, but Hartley obviously bailed out of the way. But Lewis's pace has been relentless as well.
Well, he's catching him, but has he got enough time to try and make a move? Ted, down to you. You can see what's going on in the garages. Tension everywhere, I'd have thought.
Well, yeah, but this is the race for the race win, and indeed for the championship that we want to see. Fantastic stuff, isn't it, Crofty?
Yeah.
Just another little bit of information from Mercedes. When Hamilton said, "Can I go for it?" and seemingly got no reply, and then said, "Well, I'm going for it anyway," he wasn't talking about a party mode on the engine. He was just talking about temperatures and tyre pressures and tyre temperatures, and that he didn't wait for an authorization for the team, but he went for it anyway, and we saw what happened. He just went a bit wide. But here we go. He's got a purple time again.
Absolutely, 1.2 seconds the gap for Lewis Hamilton, who's topped all of the Friday practice sessions. He's taken pole as well at Albert Park for the past 3 years in a row, but still hasn't won the race in that time. And it's looking at the moment that run's going to continue unless he can do something about it in the next few laps.
Well, it was backmarkers last year, wasn't it? And Ferrari being kinder to their rear tyres. It's the dreaded virtual safety car today that's made the difference.
Meanwhile, he's chilled out and relaxed, and now he might need to make a move on Kimi Räikkönen again. Daniel Ricciardo is getting a little bit closer. Verstappen has decided there is no time to chillax this afternoon, and he's back on Fernando Alonso's case. Nico Hulkenberg is holding off Valtteri Bottas, who's had to drop back just a little bit once again. Stoffel van Dorn is right on in there, the man who's scored 14 points in his Formula One career so far, and might just be starting off his season with McLaren, his third season technically in Formula One after his first race in Bahrain a few years ago. Well, he might be starting off with some points ahead of Carlos Sainz. And McLaren looking good for those points at the moment. Sebastian Vettel looking good for that win at the moment, but still anything can happen here in Australia this evening.
Vettel marginally faster on that previous lap. And of course Vettel's tyres, Vettel's went on lap 26, Hamilton lap 19, and then Hamilton's facing all the hot air coming off the back of the Ferrari. That's the problem. All of the furniture on the cars, all of those lovely little twists and turns that generate the downforce, they don't like driving into turbulent air.
The battle for first. Sebastian Vettel has the upper hand. He is on his way to his 9th win for Ferrari. That would equal his teammate Kimi Räikkönen, who's picked up 9 wins for the Scuderia as well. And he's on at the moment, most definitely, for his 100th podium in Formula One, and repeating what he did, of course, in Australia last year, Sebastian Vettel, and is to not take pole position, but to take the win on the Sunday.
Curious how Lewis is staying well away from the outside of the track on a few corners. Certainly the curbs as well in 11 and 12. Ever closer.
Sun setting as well, Martin. Not ideal for the drivers at this time of night. Still no DRS for Hamilton.
Yeah, but he will. I think by the time he gets round to the detection zone into turn 11, he will be Crofty.
Yep. Ted, down to you.
This strange story about Sainz and feeling queasy from the drinks. We'll have to follow that up, whether he didn't get any drinks, Crofty, but it's not a particularly hot day, is it? That would have made him feel queasy, or whatever the drink it was has made him feel sick. But anyway, it's playing into Force India's hands. Up until now, I've had a disappointing afternoon. Sergio Perez has been told this, that Sainz might not be feeling well and is attacking and is very, very close behind. We'll see if the Pink Panthers are able to pick off the last point of the day.
2009, the last time Force India didn't score in Australia, and Perez is right on Sainz's tail. They just flashed past our commentary box. Yellow and pink, it was like a blur of high-speed dolly mixtures going past us. I'm sure it'd be very sweet indeed for Force India if they can get past Carlos Sainz, and he's still right on his tail as we watch Lewis Hamilton. 8 deploy, 9 attack, it says. Going all out attack now on Sebastian Vettel as we get to the last 5 laps of the race.
He's busy, Lewis Hamilton busy doing a lot of changes on his steering wheel. And if I'm honest, I read that, he's busy in corners doing that. I read that as a white flag.
Yeah.
Let's see.
He lost 4/10 in...
yeah.
Oh, he's lost a huge amount of time there, hasn't he?
I think that's the white flag just gone out. He was busy adjusting the steering wheel mid-apex. Or apex, actually.
So what's that? Just, look, we're not going to catch him. You're going to risk your engine more by carrying on.
Turn the motor down, save it for another day. Maybe not, let's see, but it was certainly losing time, wasn't he? I mean, he lost 1.3 seconds on that lap.
Yeah.
Largely by being busy with changing his steering wheel than carrying apex speed.
Well, just when it said deploy and attack, that's the last thing he did.
But it came down to like 8 or 9, didn't we?
Yeah.
Knew he was on 14 at one point.
That's very true. Ricciardo's just set the fastest first sector, but he's 2 seconds behind Kimi Räikkönen. He's losing out on that battle at the moment. Verstappen losing out to Fernando Alonso at the moment. Is this just now getting to the stage in the race where the teams are having to think a little bit about the next race and the next race and the next race after that, with only 3 engines, 3 power units, I should say, to last them for the whole season. 3 internal combustion engines, one of the 6 elements in these power units. You have to manage all of that.
We'll give you a bit more performance for the last 2 laps.
Was it Verstappen just taking a little bit of a chill pill before really going for it right at the end? Here's your driver of the day. You can have your say and you can make your vote. There's been quite a few of them. Might come into contention. This man here has put up a brilliant defensive job, hasn't he?
Ricciardo, new fastest lap of the race from Red Bull. This does bode well. Leclerc's done a good job down in 13th for Sauber on his inaugural Grand Prix, ahead of Stroll and Hartley.
He certainly has. Carlos Sainz feeling queasy because of his drinks bottle. He's still holding off Sergio Perez. He might get a few people voting for him as well. Let's just say, if Ricciardo gets on the podium, I think he would be the worthy winner of driver of the day today.
He just took 9/10 out of Räikkönen with that one.
Mate, that is blistering pace. A second quicker than everyone else.
Yep, and he is right on Kimi's tail once again then. So let's see if we can hear the cheers around Albert Park, and can Daniel Ricciardo go on and record what would be his 28th podium in Formula One. Valtteri Bottas still struggling to get past Nico Hülkenberg, just not happening for him in terms of blasting past the Renault. His teammate Lewis Hamilton dropping ever back on Sebastian Vettel too. Sebastian Vettel now 3.5 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton. Ricciardo has got another 10th in the middle sector on Kimi Räikkönen. And they're going down the main straight, down the Walker Straight at the moment. As we watch Hülkenberg and Bottas here, Ricciardo is once again very much on Kimi Räikkönen's tail.
The last minute change of position somewhere would go down quite well, Crofty, wouldn't it?
I think
a bit of a banzai somewhere into a braking zone.
Verstappen will try and close up. We know you have it under control.
But we'll just let you know, just in case. On the pit wall is Eric Boulier talking away, and you can't quite see the expression on his face yet, but I'm sure inside much happier than he was this time last year in Australia. Fernando Alonso didn't finish the race, and Stoffel van Dorn came home in 13th. We've had more overtaking than we got last year in Australia. We might just get a bit of controversy at the end as well. Hashtag Ask Crofty for all your tweets at the end of this race, and we'll have that conversation. Once again, people might ask, should you be able to swap places by pitting during a virtual safety car, but there's nothing against it in the regulations.
No, it's supposed to absolutely neutralise the race so that nobody can gain, and clearly Alonso gained a lot and Vettel gained the most significantly by grabbing the lead from what was a pretty solid third place only, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
For Vettel, but he stayed out a lot longer. He had to stay out a lot longer because he didn't have a window back to the Haas Ferraris at that time.
Yeah, what looked like his race being ruined, with the Haas having, both Haases having problems in their pit stops and coming out with loose tyres, turned into Sebastian Vettel's saviour on this particular afternoon in Australia, and he's now gone over 3,000 laps led during his career.
Yeah, Hamilton now nearly 5 seconds adrift, so it was indeed the white flag. Surrender.
Well, Ricciardo's going for it again. Hamilton's dropping back a bit. Cars make their way through turns 9 and 10. There's that Red Bull chasing still. Kimi Raikkonen ahead of Daniel Ricciardo.
Well, Raikkonen now sort of homing in on the back of Hamilton. Doesn't really matter too much, but that's how much Hamilton's backed off.
The last lap 1:27.7 for Lewis Hamilton. Raikkonen put in a 1:26.5. And the big head out in the crowd. Underneath the crash helmet and the halo, he will be doing his damnedest on this final lap of the Australian Grand Prix to reward this record-breaking crowd in Albert Park with a podium for their home favourite. Sebastian Vettel, meanwhile, starts the final lap in the lead, comfortably in the lead, ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Kimi Raikkonen in third.
Okay, this is the last lap. You might as well use the battery.
So go for it and see where you can get past him, and look how much closer he is already on this final lap. Can he do it, Martin?
Don't see where, to be honest. You've got to build it all up and have a go down into turn 3. And the next time he'll see turn 3 is the slowing down lap.
Well, let's see. Turn 13, probably the best place for him, but he's going to have to try and stick as close as he can to the rear wing of that Ferrari, and that is easier said than done. We're watching back and seeing Raikkonen pulling ahead there of Ricciardo down the far side of the circuit. Toto Wolff looking on. It has not been the start the Mercedes wanted for this season. The first season in Formula One that we have had 2 4-time world champions starting on the same grid. And those 2 4-time world champions are going to finish 1 and 2 this afternoon. And like it was 12 months ago, it is Sebastian Vettel who comes home to win the Australian Grand Prix. Ferrari take the opening salvo in 2018. Vettel wins from Hamilton. Raikkonen on the podium ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. Fernando Alonso, who hadn't finished an Australian Grand Prix since he rejoined McLaren, is on his way home now to hold off Max Verstappen and take 5th place in this race. And what a performance that is for McLaren here in Albert Park. Alonso 5th, Verstappen 6th, Hülkenberg for Renault comes home 7th. Valtteri Bottas from 15th on the grid makes it up to 8th ahead of Stoffel van Dorn, and it should be Carlos Sainz holding off Sergio Perez for the final points position. But for 25 points, give them then to Sebastian Vettel.
Nice job, Seb. P1. Well managed. Well managed.
Grande ragazzi, grande gara. Grazie. Bella strategia. Nice one altogether. We're getting there. Still have some homework to do, but we're getting there.
Good strategy, or strategies that just worked out really good?
Well, yes, that's a better expression. I mean, running long, and then, I mean, it's lucky because how do you know the wheel's not going to go on the Haas properly? Both of them at the pit stops.
Yes, the technical collaboration doesn't extend, I think, to that particular knowledge.
No. So, yeah, It's fortuitous, but Vettel leads the World Championship for drivers, Ferrari lead the World Championship for constructors, and pleasingly, Ferrari, Mercedes and Red Bull all had the same pace.
They did. It was very, very close. Just 7 seconds separating the top 4 for today's Australian Grand Prix. And maybe in the end, it was just a trifle fortuitous that he was out-qualified by Kimi Raikkonen yesterday.
Absolutely. But you must say, if Hamilton had been in clear air, at the end it looked like the Mercedes had the edge, didn't it, in absolute raw pace.
The Mercedes would have won had it not been for the virtual safety car and then the safety car period.
Yes, Fernando, P5, mate, P5, well done, great drive, great drive.
Well done, guys. Very proud of you. Long winter, long seasons in the past, but now we can fight. We can fight.
I think that'll put the end to the, did McLaren make a mistake leaving Honda? That sort of banter and discussion.
Sadly for Honda, whose hospitality unit is rather marooned right at the end of the paddock away from everyone else. Their collaboration with Toro Rosso started with one retirement for Pierre Gasly as well, which is not what they would have wanted.
Lewis is going to be gutted and confused.
Yeah. We'll pick through the pieces of exactly what happened behind the virtual safety car and how it cost Lewis Hamilton. Would you say the Mercedes would have won this race had all things been equal, given the pace that Hamilton had? He got out ahead of Raikkonen, who was his nearest challenger.
Yeah.
Would Sebastian Vettel have had any pace at any stage to make up what was a 13-second margin, 10-second margin?
Catch and pass, no. I think Mercedes, we saw as soon as Hamilton made that mistake and got in clear air, he closed in 7/10 of a second.
Yeah.
So I think it's clear to say that the Mercedes had the ultimate pace. But as Vettel said in qualifying, he can party tonight, I'll party tomorrow. What goes around comes around. And indeed, virtual safety car laps went around and came around. And here's the winner.
Yeah.
He gets the biggest trophy.
The spoils.
And a nice little win bonus, I'd imagine. Buy some more classic motorbikes with.
He's rather fond of the two-wheel classics. I'd imagine he's rather fond of this four-wheel classic as well. Into Parc Fermé, and the #1 position as it was 12 months ago for Sebastian Vettel. A winning start for him and for Ferrari, as he celebrates with his team and celebrates a 100th podium as well in Formula One in what is his 199th race in this sport. Sebastian Vettel once again the winner of the Australian Grand Prix. Won by nearly 10 seconds last year. It's half that gap in 2018.
5 teams in the top 10. They all got 2 home in the points.
And a decent midfield scrap, has to be said. The Renaults had pace, kept Bottas at bay. Force India disappointed a little as they get to grips with the upgrade package they brought to Australia, and it didn't really work out for them on the track in this particular race. Hamilton looking a little disconsolate, very unhappy.
I think he's going to feel he's robbed with that one.
Yeah.
They'll have to look and see if he did undershoot his virtual safety car opportunity.
Offers out a hand to Sebastian Vettel, says well done, and a shake of the hands. Well, let's hope that these two are slugging it out in the way that they have done today, more often than not during the course of this season.
Weigh the driver so they can add that to the weight of the car later on in scrutineering.
And an anthem for the drivers as they emerge into the sunshine before they head out onto the podium. He might feel he was a bit robbed as well today, Kimi Raikkonen. He wasn't doing much wrong at all. He too lost out when that virtual safety car appeared.
They get up 6 seconds down though, once the front two set about each other.
for Sebastian Vettel. Yeah, the finger's back.
Tell you what though, he didn't make any mistakes when he did get out front.
Yeah, kept it very calm, very cool. Hamilton never really in a position to attack, was he?
The Mercedes started sliding around as soon as he got behind him, you could see it.
Waltzing Matilda is played out. The sprinting Seb runs up the stairs.
Plenty of energy left, hasn't he?
I think he's just done 58 laps of the Grand Prix. Well, he's made it out in time. Kimi and Lewis seem to have been waiting for him for quite a while. Kimi Räikkönen then, another podium for him. Third place here this afternoon. Lewis Hamilton started on pole, didn't win in Australia once again. Gets the runners-up position. And back on top, Sebastian Vettel. A win for Ferrari. Well, the party can start now then for Ferrari and for Sebastian Vettel. It is a 230th win for Ferrari in Formula One and one of the more pleasant winners' trophies for Sebastian Vettel. The replica of Sir Jack Brabham's steering wheel held aloft by Sebastian Vettel. We'll have the champagne sprayed in a few moments' time, and the drivers do maybe spare a thought or two to remember Dan Gurney, who passed away in January, the man most feared by Jim Clark on the track, and without whom, after his win at Le Mans in 1967, we wouldn't be seeing the drivers spraying the champagne up on the podium. He had the idea, and I'm glad it's stuck around, Martin.
Absolutely, Sir Jack didn't need too many buttons on his steering wheel, clearly, did he? Last time I drove one of these cars, I counted 46 different controls inside the cockpit.
Well, there weren't enough controls for Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes to start the season off in winning fashion. It is Sebastian Vettel on top of the podium, on top of the championship, doing what he did in Australia in 2017. A sparkling performance as far as he and Ferrari are concerned. It is victory for Vettel in Australia. The championship is underway, and Ferrari for now are on top.
Vettel, when he was out trying to build a gap to the Haas before he pitted, was losing several tenths per second to the freshly retired Hamilton and indeed Raikkonen. So it was definitely time gained under the virtual safety car that made the difference. And I'm seeing a few tweets at Brundle F1 saying, well, why don't you go through the pit lane every time then? And that's a very fair comment. Yeah. If you can gain down the pit lane, why didn't you just do that? Depending on, of course, how long the virtual safety car is out for.
It will reignite the debate as to whether you should be allowed to gain or to pit under the virtual safety car. That was the argument before that we had, but plenty of time for discussion. Hashtag AskCrofty if you want to get your tweets in, and we'll certainly read a few out. Isn't it brilliant to see all the fans pouring onto the track, the ticker tape in the air? It has been a beautiful day here in Melbourne for the first Grand Prix of the season. Time to hear from the top three on the podium.
Whoa. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what an absolute cracker of a first race between the two heavyweights and the Titanics, with the Ferrari and Mercedes legends up here. Quick team photo for the Ferrari guys. What an absolute monster crowd here. Sebastian, 48th victory, 100th podium, a couple behind Alain Prost. So run us through it. What a race.
Yeah, obviously, no, pretty good. I mean, we got a bit lucky, obviously, with the safety car, but yeah, really enjoyed it. I mean, a great turnout today. You know, I saw in the grandstand, I really enjoyed the lap coming back in. And for the race, I mean, my start, I was hoping it to be a bit better. It didn't really work, so I had to settle for third. And then towards the end of that first stint, I lost a little bit of the connection to Lewis and Kimi ahead. I was struggling a bit with the tires. I felt happier with the soft tires, with the yellow tires at the end for the second stint. And obviously, I was praying for a safety car. Then there was a car that stopped in turn 4, and I was like, no, it's not
Ferrari engine.
And then I think somebody stopped, was a Haas, I think, in the exit of turn 2.
Yeah.
And then when I saw it, obviously, you know, I was really full of adrenaline, even though, you know, the race is frozen, but still to come into the pits, everything on the limit, trying to get back out, because they told me it's really close with Lewis. And when we got out ahead, I knew that it's difficult to pass, but he kept some pressure on, especially the beginning of the last stint.
Yeah.
And then at the end, the last 5 laps, at least I could, you know, enjoy it a little bit more.
Well done.
Thank you.
Lewis, my God, what a weekend you've had. You've been, give him a good round of applause. Go on, he's been incredible this weekend. Absolutely on fire yesterday in qualifying, a lap from absolutely nowhere, mate. You've been on this podium 8 times, more than any other Grand Prix driver in history in Australia. I thought you drove phenomenal this weekend, mate. It got away through tactics in the pit lane, but run us through the race and these new cars. I mean, they're quick, they're fast. You broke the lap record yesterday in qualifying. How was the race for you?
It's been an incredible weekend, honestly. To arrive and have the performance we've had today, you know, big congratulations to Sebastian, to Ferrari. Today, obviously, they did a better job, and we're going to go back to the drawing board and work on it, but we still have great pace. Our qualifying was great. I think through the race, I was able to apply some pressure at the end.
Yeah.
But this is one awesome circuit, but it's so hard to overtake, you know, even with the extra DRS. Obviously, with the cars being as close as they were. So at the end, was really trying to, you know, live to fight another day, save the engine, and we'll try and regain the points later on. But a big thank you to everyone that's come out. We've got so many British flags here, and for the Australians for having us this week.
Well done. Well, they love you racing in front of them. Kimi, my man, how was it? Was it exciting, or give him a little... 16 times this man's raced here in front of you guys, so he's an absolute legend, and up here on the podium for the first time since he won here in 2013. But Kimi, how was your race? And
I think it was okay. Obviously, not we didn't have the most luck, but what can you do? I mean, luckily it was Seb who got the luck, and it was our team at least. So I think I had a decent speed all day long, and it's just difficult to pass. I got a good go in the second corner, and then just try to follow and see if we can do something on a pit stop, and then obviously with the safety car is pure luck, but yeah, we could held on the third place, got some pressure in the end with Red Bull with a little bit more fresh tires, but yeah, I'll take it third place. I think been happy with the car, and it's nice to go on the next
Well
race.
done, mate. Good job. Sebastian, just wrapping up. We meet here again as Victoria, so it's a little bit of a nice meeting point for us in terms of Ferrari winning. Season starting off on the front foot. Last year was a titanic battle with Lewis. Off to Bahrain in a few weeks. How do you see it playing out?
I mean, obviously we were a little bit lucky today. You know, Lewis was had a great lap yesterday. He deserved pole position, and he, you know, drove a very good race. Obviously controlled it in the beginning. Then, as I said, we got a bit lucky, but we take it. We put a flag up in Maranello for every win. So I asked them to do that this morning back in Europe. And yeah, I mean, we're not yet there where we want to be. I'm not yet exactly there with the car. You know, if I don't feel, you know, what I need to feel, then it's a bit tricky. I think we all know.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, but I think it gives us a good, you know, good start and a good wind and fresh motivation for the next coming weeks.
Well done. Well, Melbourne, thank you very much. It's been an absolute fantastic first round of the World Championship. We look forward to seeing you under lights in Bahrain in a few weeks' time. Thank you very much.